spread the rebellion virally. It's all there. Wristbands, citizen rule books in every order. Order online at Infowars.com today. The water filters, the canteens. It's all there. Infowars.com. Oh, yes, you found it. The literal front line in the info war. The true alternative media that is endangering to extinct the dinosaur, corporate, lying, deceiving, teleprompter media. This is teleprompter-free news. Thank you for joining us. Well, you saw Stuart Rhodes break down the awful truth about the police state surpassing even my imagination with how quickly it's moving. What we laid out previously, it turns out, is pale compared to the nakedness of the tyranny that we now see pouring into our society at every turn. And we've broken down a lot of the incredible financial news that's out there. Like I mentioned in the news segment, Henry Paulson gave hedge funds inside information on Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae when he was Treasury Secretary. Totally illegal. But Corzine's invested with the head of the CFTC. Billions of dollars of people's private accounts are missing. You see, it's a new era of corruption where they throw it right in our face because they've gotten the crooks in every regulatory position. Now, a lot of you that listen to the syndicated radio show hear once a week or so Ted Anderson, who's the owner of the Genesis Radio Network, but he also got into radio because he was sponsoring radio, owning Midas Resources, now the 5th largest gold and silver broker in the country. And Ted's been a sponsor of mine for almost 16 years now, even before I was on his Genesis Network, when I was just on local radio here. And sometimes you hear Ted on promoting gold and silver on the show, which has been a good investment. I only promote things that I believe in. Gold has 5-6 times what it was 10 years ago. Silver almost 8 times. Silver $5, now 30 plus. Gold $260-something, now 1,800. But Ted's not here today to tell you about gold and silver you can get from Midas Resources. Ted is here to give us his 30-plus years studying markets on what he sees happening in the world today. So we're going to talk to him about the type of climate we're in, the numbers coming in that only confirm this depression is a depression, has been a depression for a very long time. Ted Anderson, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me up, Alex. And boy, what a roller coaster ride that we have been on. My goodness. Yeah, you're right about that. Right now, the times are tough. Investors are having a really difficult time to try to make decisions of where they can go for safety. There was an interview with Mikhail Prokhorov. I think I'm probably butchering that name. It's a billionaire over in the Soviet Union, and he was asked. He says, "What would you invest in? Would it be treasuries, U.S. treasuries, bars of gold, or top-tier Picassos?" And he said clearly, gold bars. He says people would be better off investing in Finland and their debt because they're less likely to try to inflate away their debt problems. The United States is in a quandary. We can't hardly afford our own government and our own bills, and now we're stepping in to bail out Europe. Obviously, that's going to not bode very well for the United States dollar at all.
Well, Ted, I mean, it's come out that the Federal Reserve private shareholders also own the European Central Bank. So the Federal Reserve is bailing out its other hand. We need to discuss, though, the body and the head and the brain of this system. It is the New World Order. We talk about world government, banking collapses, bringing in the world government. Now we're seeing it in Europe. What do you make of open announcements that they're going to get rid of any self-determination of the nations of Europe, and that it's going to be a, quote, Goldman Sachs dictatorship, and our media is saying, wow, this is great. The Economist is talking about how great it is. Wow, it's great to be ruled by corrupt banks that sold the fraud that caused all this. Gee, isn't it great? Isn't it great to get, run over by a Mack truck, Ted?
Well, we're already seeing that right now, Alex, because the President of the United States, of whom we voted in to be our leader, was saying that he was not going to use U.S. dollars to bail out the European banks. And the very next day, the Federal Reserve steps in and does it anyways. I heard, I keep hearing talk about the Federal Reserve being the second most powerful institution in the United States, just behind the Supreme Court. I don't think that that's true. I don't think the Supreme Court has the power that the Fed does right now. And obviously with the Fed and their member branches and their elites doing things that are above and beyond the law, and the Supreme Court not stepping in to try to stop them, is proof in that the fact that the Fed is actually the controlling factor here.
Sure, and it's about as Federal Express or Federal Ammunition or Federal Toilet Cleaners. But Ted, continuing to look at this situation, have they gone a step too far? I mean, the globalists have gotten into global power because they are hubris-filled, they are very reckless, they are very cunning, they are willing to really go for broke. An example is Corzine, the president's top fiscal advisor, betting 40-1 on European bonds with people's private accounts. I mean, now, though, they're so criminal out in the open. Have they gone too far, Ted?
Well, I think they've gone way too far, Alex. I mean, they have way too much control. They should be reined in, and actually we should get rid of the Fed and get back to what constitutional money, what the Constitution calls for, because of the fact that they have been able to buy off our politicians and have legislation created specifically just for them to give them more power. I mean, when you hear the president trying to turn over more power to the Fed, that's just because they are bought off. That's where the lubricant comes for all these.
Well, sure, Ted. I mean, just to clarify my question, though, I mean, I like your answer to the other question, but I'm saying, of course, they've gone too far. I'm saying, have they gone too far to get away with it, even with a brain-dead population?
Well, the population is waking up. However, the majority is still brain-dead. I think they can go even further. But are they off the edge of the cliff? Can they recover? Can they come back? I don't think so. I think the United States dollar is doomed. We're way too far into this thing. We've got way too much debt. The only way that they can seem to solve problems nowadays is by turning on the printing press and making more money, which causes more inflation, which allows, they lose power when that happens. Because if the Federal Reserve System's money is worthless, nobody's going to turn to it as a reserve currency. They're going to turn their nose up to it, just like they do in Zambia and like they did in the South America, like Argentina, Brazil. Mexico is the same thing. The further away they go, but they are leading us right into a world-type currency, a world-run currency system, and that's where you're seeing it right now. Is the Fed stepping in and bailing out the banks of Europe, and that's really just a bailout for their buddies. That's so their investments don't have to take the hit. You're talking about Corzine and his deals. Well, why wouldn't you invest in risky investments if you know the government's going to step in and bail them out? And when I say government, I mean quasi-government. The Fed is going to step in and do whatever it takes in order to help their buddies out. But for us people out here, the small fry, we're dead. I mean, we're the ones that are going to take the hit. It's just like taking money right out of our savings accounts.
Ted, we know that Hank Paulson, the head of the Treasury Department in 2008, gave himself bailout money, but it's okay because he gave himself a waiver. I mean, the fox gave himself a waiver to eat chickens in the hen house. Maybe it'd be okay if Hitler gave himself a waiver. There wouldn't even need to be a Nuremberg. He's like, hey, I've got a waiver right here. Well, now, as I mentioned earlier, the Daily Mail reports Hank Paulson gave hedge fund inside information on Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae when he was Treasury Secretary so that they could basically make big profits off of it while screwing the public. I mean, again, this stuff comes out, and in the past, this guy would go to jail. Now it's like, hey, it's all right.
Yeah, he should go to jail for that. I mean, insider trading is insider trading. I don't care if it comes from a government official or if it comes from Bernie Madoff. I mean, yeah, obviously the man should be incarcerated and charged with this crime. But, he's not going to be. We know that. And that's, again, if you're well enough connected, you're going to be able to get away with this type of thing. For the average person, it's just simply not true. He did. He was able to get himself out of trouble. They wrote into that particular, during the TARP bailout, that these companies or these people could get away from, or they're above and beyond the law. They couldn't be prosecuted for these types of crimes. And though they should be. I mean, for goodness sakes, the Fed was, they're talking about $700 billion to be injected into the economy, bailing out these banks. Well, guess what? The Treasury put out that $700 billion, but at the same time, the Fed was putting out $7.7 trillion. And, you know, it's such a larger sum, and at that time, it was all done in secret.
And by the way, I have a screenshot of that, Ted. Folks want to show a document cam to the viewers from Forbes. Why did we know about the Fed's $7.7 trillion? And then, of course, there's also the other reports that are out there dealing with the 16+ trill. I mean, this is incredible. And then they want us to pay all this back in taxes. We give them bailouts, and then the system comes back to us, and then we have to pay them interest on the bailout that we gave them.
Yeah, that's the whole problem with the issue. It all falls in the lap of the U.S. citizen. I mean, we shouldn't stand for this. There should be revolting in the streets over this. I mean, Occupy Wall Street, if they had a clue as to what's going on, they would go right after this. And the people really should be up in arms with this whole thing, but they're not, because, again, maybe 10% of the people have an idea, a clue of what's going on. And so that's how they get away with this. And they pass these laws. They shouldn't be able to. They go above and beyond the law. That's why I say the Supreme Court, it does not have more power than the Fed. The Fed has the power. We've handed this nation over to a bunch of elite, money-producing banking people. I mean, it's happened in nations again and again. And we've had 100 years of a fiat-type system, and they're able to use a printing press to buy out our politicians. It's no surprise that we're in the position that we are. But you know what? At the end of it, when it all comes down, the United States dollar is going to be in the ashes, and the people are going to be standing in the breadlines. It's sad to watch it go this direction, but that's what's going on. The Fed
is there any way to pull out of it now with the people that are driving the bus? Because one sign that they know they're going to globally devalue all the major currencies is the Europe of the police state, the preparation for collapse, the system acting so incredibly brazen. I mean, they're snatching everything that's even nailed down right now as they all basically prepare for the crash themselves.
Well, I mean, Alex, when the FOMC voted, when they met and they voted on this, whether they're going to bail out Europe or not, there was only one central banker that voted against this, and he's not even a member. He was standing in. The reason why 1 against 9. I mean, I don't think that we have the willpower, the political willpower, to stand up to these people. However, yes, there is a way to stop this. Stop bailing out the Wall Street banks. Stop bailing out Europe. Let the crash occur. Reorganize, allow prices to float freely in the marketplace, and yeah, it would be painful, but then we'll be back to something that's real. Now, can we get away from the Federal Reserve System? Can we get away from fiat money with this political body that we have? I doubt it. What do you have? I mean, we have about 8 and 10% people supporting the message of Ron Paul. This is his message. Hey, let's get back to solid money, and let's get away from this fiat system. The people, they don't understand it. They don't know what's eating them alive, what's eating out the very substance. This is what the forefathers wrote about when they wrote the Declaration of Independence.
But what's sick, Ted, you're right, is that it's premeditated. I mean, the very groups that engineered it are now announcing a global government with no laws for them, total laws on us. I mean, it's just too rich, and they wouldn't be making this move if they didn't think the public was ignorant on the facts, and that's why our work and Ron Paul's work has been so important.
Yeah, I agree with that, Alex, and that's the whole thing. These people live on this. They want to control the market. It's their business. They want to set up a cartel and to be able to control the market. And the more control they can get, the more they'll push for. So that's, you can just conclude that the reason why they want to have a world government is because they can tap into the resources of the entire world. The Federal Reserve System was able to tap into the resources of the United States. Now, a world government will allow you to be able to tax away and inflate away the value of everybody's labor across the entire world.
That's right. These globalists don't just want to steal a large percentage of the public's money. They wage war against real free market companies, individual liberty, private farmland, real money, and they want to make everybody debt slaves, and their ideology is eugenics, which is forced population reduction. I mean, it could not be a worse scenario, but when you study history, the worst of the worst, when you get a tyranny, get into power. And so that's why it is the worst possible scenario. My God, it's amazing.